Checkboxes and radio buttons are some pretty fundamental elements for user interfaces in web design these days. They also happen to be a bear to work with in Angular in general. So let's see how YDS can make working with checkboxes and radio buttons a little bit simpler. So first of all, we'll go and see we just got a blank widget here on our page, not much going on. Let's go in and just create a simple checkbox. What I've done is come to the Yansa Design System documentation site. We got a section for checkbox group. So I'm just going to copy off the client.js for a simple checkbox group. We'll copy that into our JS code. I'll come back and I'll grab the HTML. Copy that into our HTML. Save this. And then we should have a set of checkboxes. Cool, and if we start to select these, we can see how they work, just like you'd expect the checkbox to work, but we do have our value down here, and as you select more, you end up with a comma-separated list of the items you've selected. And this is great. We also have a few more options within the YDS checkboxes, like for instance, orientation. Maybe we'd rather see these things horizontally orientated. So I can go in here and just set orientation. Default is vertical, but I can set orientation equals horizontal. Save this. And now I've got me some horizontal checkboxes, so it's very easy to change this depending on what you want your user interface to look like. And as always, these are tightly bound to our scope, the view you see in your user interface, which means that we can go in and make some programmatic changes, change the choice options, do some other things on the back end. Those will always be reflected in the UI. So I'm going to set some of that up, and then I'll come back and show you what that looks like. So please stick with me. Okay, so I've added a few things over to my client script, namely a few buttons where I set the value to Corfu. I'll remove Corfu and Santorini from the options that are available, nullify the value, and then set a read-only variable. And I've added a couple things in the tag here to allow us to do this, and then just made the programmatic changes over here in the client script. So pretty straightforward what we're trying to do. Let's see how it works. So over here immediately I can see I've got a checkbox group working the way it always does. So say I've got these three selected, and maybe I want to programmatically set this value to just Corfu. Click set to Corfu and it does it, and you'll see it was changed here in the variable value as well as on the UI. Maybe I've gotten like Corfu and Hydra selected here in my UI, but for some reason, based on some other form input, the options change. So if I remove Corfu and Santorini from the options programmatically, I'll see that they've been removed from our UI. In addition, I removed it from our selection in our variable. So we're doing a little bit of validation there where we keep the valid values but remove the invalid values on the UI and in the actual variable value. Finally, I can nullify the value to set it to nothing, or set it read-only so I can actually interact with this thing. So whether it's the user interacting or whether it's the server interacting, we have lots of options, lots of ways to change those underlying variables and make this a very interactive, powerful UI element. But we don't just have checkboxes, right? We also have radio buttons and even some switches in YDS. So let me go and add those and show you some of the other UI elements that we had to play with. Okay, there we go. So I just went back to YDS and copy and pasted a couple of other elements for our YDS radio button group and our YDS switch group, added some choices for those. And now you can see what those look like in our service portal. So we have radio buttons, work just the same way you'd expect. You can only have one selection valid at a time. And switches, which were an element in ServiceNow that didn't make it over to Service Portal, but now you can have them in Service Portal as well. So these are all three sort of related elements, checkboxes and switches that give you multiple options, radio buttons that just give you one option at a time, but they all basically work the same. If you look in the YDS documentation, you'll see very similar options for each of these with some customized options based on the different type of elements. Switches have a choice of a different switch shape or perhaps where the labels are placed on the switch. Radio buttons have very similar options just around the value, the choices, the orientations. They all basically work the same. So if you know how to use one, you can then switch back and forth and see which one works best for your application simply by changing the tag from checkbox to switch to radio button. So we hope this enables you to more easily build richer UIs for your users where they can select based on different UI elements based on the use case and whatever is most convenient and provides the best user experience for the end user. So thanks a lot. We hope you find these useful. If you have any questions, please come over to the Yansa Design System and click the Contact Us link in the top right. Thanks a lot.